Welcome to Sundermead, the open world adventure game where you have to build a community of people, each with unique quests, items and abilities. As I'm coming up to release in the next few months, I'd like to get Sundermead running on as much hardware as physically possible. Right now I'm able to consistently get 200 FPS on my RTX 3070, which is a level of performance I'm very happy with. But I understand not everyone has a good GPU like mine. I discovered recently that Unity URP actually supports FSR, which uses AI to help upscale games and give players better performance. I've already done some research on this and I found that Unity is severely lacking in documentation on this, so I've had to figure out how it works on my own. So as you'd expect, I have it as a setting in my video settings, so here you can see upscaling and I can select AMD FSR and a couple of other options show up. So I can set the resolution that the game will actually render at and then upscale to this resolution here. Hit save, you can see that over here in the settings it's actually updated to render scale 0.7. So what Unity is actually doing is downscaling it and then using FSR to re-upscale it. It's kind of weird and it took me a minute to figure that out, but if anyone's having problems, there you go. That's the reason it might not be working properly for you. And there we have it, significantly better performance for lower end hardware without much work really. Unity URP doesn't support DLSS just yet, but as soon as it does, I will chuck it straight into the game and we'll be off to the races. So now that that's out of the way, I think I'm going to start working on this update's character. It's the Seeress, who the player will use to communicate with the gods. I'll explain a bit more later. Alright, so I'm just working on the last quest for the Seeress and I've got a little document, so I'll just give you a quick overview of what it's going to be about. So it's called the Seeress' Sanctuary, where from the previous quest, she gives you a large runic stone, which is kind of like the summoning stone. So if any of you have been around for a while, you'll probably remember the summoning stone. It was an old item that you'd use to sacrifice items to the gods. I took it out to be replaced with the new character inviting tree, but I wanted to actually have sacrifices still in the game, so hence the Seeress. She tells you to put it in a suitable place, and then once placed, you go and speak to her and she gives you the recipes to be able to create the sacrifices, which are these up here. There's 4 of them, each will do a different thing. And then when you want to sacrifice them, you'll just go and talk to her, tell her, I want to make a sacrifice. You give her the item, and then whatever it is, it will kick in. So what I've got to do now is figure out exactly what I want the large rune stone to look like. And from one of the asset packs I bought a little while ago that I used for some of the trees, it actually had some runes in it. So I'll see if I can just find them. Alright, so yeah, here they are. These are actually 2 separate models, just sort of stacked on top of each other. So I'm just going to quickly go onto Wikipedia and double check that these runes were actually part of the Anglo-Saxon Futhark. So scrolling down to the list of runes, I can see that we have the Fail, which is this one here, the Thorn, and the Gar, which is the Thorn and the Gar. But this one I can't actually see in the list. But if you scroll down, it's here called Kalk. And the difference is that these ones up here are actually properly attested to in Anglo-Saxon literature, whereas these ones down here aren't, but they are used in actual manuscripts, so that's kind of good enough for me. One interesting thing is that the Sayax that I've modelled for Sundermead is actually based upon one found in the Thames estuary here. And you can see it on it, it has the Futhark with the rest of the letters. And here's my version of it. So it hasn't got the letters inscribed, but I think it still looks fairly accurate to it. So yeah, now I'm just going to get on with actually making the final quest and I'll see you when that's done. So I've just finished putting the building blocks together for the last quest for the Seeress, and it occurred to me that I've never actually showed off how I go about making quests. I think I briefly spoke about it when I first added them, but the system is very different now, so I think it might be quite interesting. So here's that quest. This is actually just the first stage, and my quests are set up into stages kind of similar to how Bethesda quests work. And each quest is made up of these little nodes. It's almost like a simplified visual programming language, but the simplification allows it to be a lot more performant. So these run from the exit output to the entry output. So it starts with the dialog start node and then just kind of goes from there. So a lot of quests start with add to tree, and What this essentially means is that we add a new dialogue option to a given actor's tree. So in this case, it's the Seeress. We give it an ID, and then we have two outputs. So the exit output simply means call this when that option is clicked, and then pass through gets called immediately. And then we display some dialogue for the actor. And then this one's kind of interesting. I can actually check if the player has space for a given item. And in this context, if they doesn't have enough space, the Seeress will tell you, come back later when you do. And then if the player does, keeps going, ritual is complete, blah, 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 blah. It's very simple, but it works really, really well. Most of my quests are made like this. Some of them I haven't ported over from the old system yet, and they are done purely by code. But the absolute majority are done like this, and it works beautifully. So one helpful little thing this system does is let me implement logical branches into my quests. So here I have a few dialogue options, and I don't want them to be displayed until a certain condition is met. So using this little variable in the node here is visible. What I can do is actually drag it out and connect it to another node with an output of some Boolean. In this case, it's whether a player has a certain item or not. And what I can do is just grab that and chuck it in. And it's as simple as that. So the context for that is actually that it's the last quest for the Seeress. When you finish her last story quest, she'll give you some recipes to craft some sacrifices. And then what you can do is you can craft them and then give them to her, which then she'll sort of sacrifice to the gods for you. And each sacrifice will give you a different buff. The last thing I want to do for this update is rework the buying and selling menu. So here's my new design for it. Originally, they were actually two separate menus. So the buying menu and the sell menu would be two completely different things, and you'd have to ask to do them separately with the NPC. Now I'm going to have them unified. So we've got the buying menu here, so what you can buy, and then there's going to be a few small slots, maybe like a 5x5 or something like that over here, which shows how much money you've got. Tells you this is the sell side, this is the buy side. Alright, so that is done now, and it was surprisingly easy actually, which is always nice. So what I'm going to do is just jump back into the game quickly, and I'll show you how it used to work. Then after that, I'll show you how it's working now. Right, so I'll just go talk to Aedred. And you can see I actually have two options. So the first is I'd like to trade with you, and that gives you the option to buy things from him. And you get your long list, because he's the trader, he sells quite a lot. And I go off, and I'd have some items I'd like to sell. And this is where you sell. Now, this is where the improvement comes in, because it's actually unified into one menu now. Okay, so I'm here with Aedred again, and now if I speak to him, what you're going to see is I only have one option, and it's I'd like to trade with you. Click it, and we get a combination of the two. So we have the list of things we can buy from him, and we have the little grid of slots where we can drop items and sell them to him. Now you can obviously see it's a lot smaller, but it's still 16 items, which I personally think is going to be plenty. And yeah, I think that is going to be a definite improvement for the game, just make things a little bit nicer and a little bit easier to work with. And I reckon that's about it for this devlog. I tend to post devlogs monthly, so stick around for those. And as usual, I've got a Steam page where you can go and wishlist Sundermead if you like the look of it. I've also got a Discord server where I tend to post more granular updates as well. Anyway, I hope this video piqued your interest in at least some form. And thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.